They tell you that space is silent. They lie. Space screams. It screams in the static of a dead radio, in the groan of metal stretching beyond its yield point, and in the hollow thud of your own heartbeat when you realize the map ends right where you were standing. We were told we were explorers. We were told we were the tip of the spear, pushing into the unknown to secure humanity's future among the stars. But when the comms array shattered and the last tether to Earth snapped, we weren't soldiers anymore. We were ghosts drifting in a void that didn't want us there. This isn't a story about glory. It isn't about medals or parades. It's about 5 people who looked into the abyss, saw something looking back, and decided to hold the line not because they were ordered to, but because if they didn't, no one else would ever know we existed. If you've ever felt alone in a crowd, if you've ever had to make a choice that cost you a piece of your soul to save someone else's, then listen closely. Because out here, beyond the edge of known space, leadership isn't about giving orders. It's about deciding who gets to come home and who stays behind to keep the dark at bay. The alarm didn't blare. It didn't have to. The silence was louder than any siren could ever be. I woke up to the taste of copper and the smell of ozone. My head was pounding, a rhythmic thudding behind my eyes that synced perfectly with the emergency lighting pulsing red against the bulkheads of the USC Ethelgard. I pushed myself up from the deck plates, my magnetic boots clicking softly as they engaged, anchoring me to the floor. Gravity was fluctuating again. That was the first bad sign. The second was the view through the viewport. There were no stars, not in the way we knew them. The familiar constellations of Orion, Cassiopeia, the Southern Cross, they were gone. In their place was a swirling, bruised tapestry of violet and charcoal nebulae, thick and oppressive like oil spilled on black glass. We had jumped. The experimental drive, the slipstream engine that Command had sworn was stable, had done exactly what it was designed to do. It punched a hole through reality and shoved us through. But it hadn't put us where the charts said we'd go. It had put us nowhere, or everywhere. I couldn't tell which was worse. Commander Vance? The voice was shaky, thin. I turned to see Lieutenant Kalen sliding down the ladder from the upper deck. He was our navigator, a kid barely 24, with eyes too big for his face and hands that wouldn't stop trembling. He was clutching a datapad like it was a holy relic. "Report, Kalen," I said, keeping my voice low. "Panic is contagious. In a sealed tin can floating in infinite nothing. Panic is a death sentence. The NAV computer it's looping, sir. It keeps trying to triangulate our position based on pulsar maps, but the signals are wrong. The frequencies are shifted. It's like the physics out here are slightly off." Kalen swallowed hard, his atoms apple bobbing. "We're 3,000 light years beyond the Perseus arm. Maybe more. The sensors can't pick up any known celestial bodies. No planets. No stars within 10 parsecs. Just this fog." I walked over to him and took the datapad. The screen was a mess of error codes and geometric shapes that made my eyes water if I stared too long. "Reset the primary array. Use the manual backup." And Kalen, he looked up, terrified. "Breathe. You're doing fine." I clapped a hand on his shoulder, feeling the tension radiating off him. He nodded, forcing a weak smile, and scrambled back up the ladder to the bridge. I needed to check on the rest of the crew. The Ethelgard was a frigate-class vessel, designed for deep-range reconnaissance, not survival in uncharted voids. We had a crew of 12, but only 5 of us were currently conscious and mobile. The others were in med bay, sedated due to the neural shock of the jump. I moved through the corridors, the ship groaning around me. The hull was cooling rapidly, the thermal shields having taken a beating during the transition. I could hear the hiss of escaping atmosphere in Sector 4, but the automated seals had held. For now, I reached the engineering bay. The heat hit me first, a wall of stifling, oily warmth. Chief Engineer Mara Rostova was already there, knee-deep in the guts of the slipstream drive. She was a woman carved from granite and grease, with arms covered in tattoos of engine schematics, and a mouth that could strip paint. She didn't look up as I entered. "If you're here to ask if we can jump back, the answer is no," she grunted, wrenching a bolt free with a spark of plasma. "The core is cracked. Not structurally, but energetically. It's leaking exotic matter. If I try to spin it up again, we'll turn into a supernova the size of a marble. And then we'll be dead. Can we fix it?" I asked, leaning against the railing. Mara stopped. She wiped sweat from her forehead with a rag that was darker than the oil stains on her jumpsuit. She looked at me, her eyes hard and tired. Fix it. Commander, I don't even understand what this thing is made of anymore. The readings are nonsensical. It's like the drive is thinking. It's resisting repair protocols. I've never seen machinery behave like it has a mood swing. A mood swing, I repeated. Yeah, a bad one. Look, Vance, we're stranded. The fuel cells are at 40%. Life support is stable for 6 months if we conserve power. But without the drive, we're coffin. A very expensive, high-tech coffin. I nodded. Keep it stable, Mara. Don't try to force it. Just keep the lights on. She snorted. Always the optimist. Get out of my bay. You're letting the cold in. I left her to her work and headed for the med bay. Dr. Eris Thorne was sitting by the bedside of Sergeant Miller, our heavy weapons specialist, who was still unconscious. Thorne was an older man, calm to the point of unnerving, with silver hair and hands that moved with surgical precision. He was reading a physical book, a rare luxury in the digital age. How is he? I asked. Thorne didn't look up from his page. Concussion. Minor neural fatigue. He'll wake up in an hour or two. The others are similar. The jump, it wasn't just physical, Elias. It was psychological. I monitored their brainwaves during the transition. They all experienced the same hallucination. A voice, calling them by name. I felt a chill crawl on my spine. What did it say? Thorne finally looked at me. His eyes were sad. It said, "Welcome home." But none of them recognized the voice. And yet they all wept. I stared at him. Hallucinations caused by spatial displacement. It's a known side effect of experimental drives. Is it? Thorne closed his book. Or is it something else? We are beyond known space, Elias. What if known is a protective barrier? What if we stepped outside the fence? Don't start with the metaphysics, Eris. I need you focused on keeping them alive. If Miller wakes up angry, I need him coherent, not philosophical. Thorne smiled faintly. As you command. But remember, Commander, the mind seeks patterns. If it finds none, it creates them. Be careful what you listen to in the silence. I left the med bay, his words echoing in my head. Welcome home. It was a comforting phrase, twisted into a threat by the context. I made my way to the bridge. Kalen was there along with Specialist Jinx, our comms and electronics officer. Jinx was a petite woman with neon blue hair and a demeanor that swung between manic energy and catatonic focus. She was currently tapping furiously on a holographic keyboard, her eyes scanning streams of data that flowed like waterfalls around her. Anything? I asked. Jinx didn't stop typing. Static, white noise, cosmic background radiation. But wait. She paused, her fingers hovering. There's a pattern. It's faint, buried under the interference. It's not natural. It's repetitive. Prime numbers. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. Kalen leaned in. A signal? From who? Not from who. Jinx whispered. From what? It's coming from the nebula. Directly ahead. Distance unknown. The signal strength isn't diminishing with distance. That's impossible. Unless the source is everywhere. I looked out the viewport. The violet fog seemed to pulse, subtly, in time with the prime numbers Jinx was decoding. Can we decode it? I'm trying. But it's not language. It's structure. It's like a blueprint. Or a map. Jinx turned to me, her face pale. Commander, I think it's inviting us in. Inviting us? To the source. The signal is getting stronger. If we drift closer, we might get a clearer read. But if we stay here, the radiation from the nebula will eventually fry our shields. We have maybe 48 hours before the hull integrity starts to compromise. I looked at the tactical display. We were dead in the water. No engine, no vac-up, no way home, and, ahead of us, a mysterious signal in a sea of nothingness. It was a trap. It had to be, but staying put was a slow death. Plot a course, I said. Use the maneuvering thrusters. Keep speed minimal. Conserve fuel. We're going to see what's waiting for us. Kalen hesitated. Sir, that's not protocol. We should wait for rescue. There is no rescue, Kalen. I said, my voice harder than I intended. We are beyond the range of any relay buoy. We are on our own. And I'd rather die moving toward an answer than rotting in the dark waiting for a ghost. Kalen nodded, swallowing his fear, and began to input the coordinates. Jinx went back to her console, muttering about encryption keys. I sat in the command chair, the leather worn and cracked, and stared into the void. The next 12 hours were a blur of tension and monotony. We drifted closer to the source of the signal. The nebula grew denser, the violet hues shifting to a deep, bruised purple. The ship creaked and groaned, the temperature dropping despite the life support systems working overtime. We huddled in the bridge, sharing ration packs, and tried to keep morale from plummeting. Miller woke up around hour 14. He stumbled onto the bridge, rubbing his head, looking confused but alert. He saw the view outside and froze. "Where the hell are we?" he rumbled, his voice gravelly. "Beyond the map," I said. "Grab a seat, Miller. We're going hunting." Miller grinned, a predatory expression that reminded me why he was our heavy weapons guy. "Finally, something to shoot. Don't get ahead of yourself." Mara's voice crackled over the comms. "I've got a problem down here. The drive, it's humming. Not mechanically. It's singing. And the frequency is matching the signal Jinx found." I frowned. "Is it dangerous?" "It's resonating," Mara said, "like a tuning fork. If that signal changes pitch, the drive might shatter. Or explode. I'm trying to dampen it, but it's fighting me. Keep us posted, Mara." "Jinx, any change in the signal?" Jinx's eyes widened. "It's changing. The prime number stopped. Now it's images. Data packets. I'm decoding them." "What are they?" Jinx projected the decoded data onto the main screen. It wasn't text. It was a star chart, but not of our galaxy. It was a map of a solar system with a single planet highlighted in red. And overlaid on the map was a symbol, a circle with a line through it. The universal symbol for null, or void. "It's a coordinate," Kalen breathed. "And a warning. Or an invitation," Jinx corrected. "Both," I said. "Kalen, adjust course. Take us to that planet. Full impulse on the thrusters. Let's see what's waiting for us in the null." As we turned the ship, the nebula seemed to part, creating a corridor of clear space leading directly to the coordinate. It was too perfect, too convenient. But we had no choice. We were moths drawn to a flame, and the flame was the only light in the universe. I looked at my team. Kalen, terrified but competent. Jinx, fascinated and afraid. Miller, ready for violence. Thorn, watching from the doorway, his expression unreadable. Mara, fighting a battle in the engine room against a machine that had gained a soul. And me, the leader, the one who had to pretend I knew what I was doing. I checked my sidearm, a habit more than a necessity. There was nothing to shoot out here, but the weight of it in my hand grounded me. It was real, solid, unlike the swirling madness outside. "Brace for impact," I said, though there was nothing to impact yet. "We're crossing the threshold." The ship shuddered as we entered the corridor. The lights flickered. The hum of the drive grew louder, a harmonic chord that vibrated in my teeth. And then the screens went black. For a second, there was total darkness, total silence. Then a voice spoke, not over the comms, not in my head, but in the air itself. "You were late." And the stars returned. But they were wrong. They were blue, and they were watching us. The voice hung in the air, vibrating through the deck plates, through our bones, through the very atoms of the ship. "You were late." I blinked, my eyes adjusting to the sudden return of light. The main screen was no longer black. It showed a planet. It was massive, a gas giant with rings of crystalline ice that caught the light of 3 blue suns. It was beautiful, terrifyingly beautiful. And it was close. Too close. "Proximity alert," Kalen shouted, his fingers flying across the console. "We're being pulled in. Gravitational shear is increasing. Thrusters are at maximum, but we're sliding." "Cut the engines," I yelled. "Reverse thrust. All power to forward shields." "I can't," Kalen screamed. "The controls are locked out. The ship is flying itself." I unbuckled and rushed to the NAV station, shoving Kalen aside gently but firmly. I tried to override the system manually, but the interface was unresponsive. The code was rewriting itself in real time, symbols flashing too fast to read. It wasn't human code. It wasn't even AI. It was something organic, flowing like blood through veins. "Mara," I shouted into the comms. "Kill the drive. Shut it down completely." "I'm trying." Mara's voice was strained, panicked. "It won't let go. The core is hot, Vance. It's feeding on the gravitational pull. If I cut the power, the backlash will kill us all." "Jinx, can you hack the lockout?" Jinx was sweating, her neon hair sticking to her forehead. It's not a lockout, Commander. It's a handshake. The ship is communicating with the planet, or whatever is on it. It's asking for permission to land. Permission? Miller growled, gripping his rifle. Since when do planets give permission? Since they're alive, Thorne said quietly from the doorway. He hadn't moved. He was staring at the screen with a mixture of awe and horror. Look at the rings. They're not ice. They're data. Storage crystals. This isn't a planet. It's a library. Or a grave. The ship lurched violently, throwing us against our restraints. The G-forces spiked, pressing the air out of my lungs. I gasped, fighting to stay conscious. Through the viewport, I saw the surface of the planet rushing up to meet us. It wasn't gas. It was solid. A landscape of jagged spires and vast, flat plains of obsidian. We're going to crash. Kalen wailed. No. I gritted out, fighting the pressure on my chest. We're landing. Brace yourselves. The impact was softer than I expected. There was no explosion, no fire. Just a deep, resonant thrum that shook the entire ship, followed by silence. The engines powered down. The lights stabilized. The gravity normalized. We were alive. I unstrapped myself, my body aching. Status report. Everyone okay? Groans and affirmatives echoed around the bridge. Miller was checking his rifle, instinctively. Jinx was slumped over her console, breathing heavily. Kalen was shaking, tears streaming down his face. Thorne was still standing, calm as ever. Mara, I called out. I'm here, she coughed. Drive is offline. Core is stable but cold. I think it's sleeping. Sleeping. Yeah, like it did what it came to do. And now it's resting. Vance, you need to see this. I left the bridge and went down to engineering. Mara was standing by the core, which was no longer glowing with the erratic blue light of exotic matter. It was dark, dormant, but surrounding it, projected in the air, was a hologram. It was a map of the ship, but expanded. It showed every circuit, every wire, every atom. And overlaid on it was another map. The planet below. They're identical, Mara whispered. The ship's architecture, it matches the planetary grid, down to the micron. This ship wasn't built, Vance. It was grown, or copied. I stared at the hologram. Copied from what? From them. Mara pointed to the viewport. Whoever built this place. I went back to the bridge. The airlock cycle was complete. The external cameras showed a landscape of black stone and strange, bioluminescent flora that pulsed with a soft green light. The sky was a deep indigo, the 3 blue suns casting long, sharp shadows. We need to go out there, I said. Are you insane? Miller snapped. We don't know what's out there. Could be toxic. Could be hostile. We need samples, Thorne said. And answers. The signal brought us here. It wants us to see something. I'll go, I said. Miller, you're with me. Jinx, bring the scanner suite. Kalen, stay on the bridge and monitor the ship. If anything moves, if the ship tries to take off again, you scream. Mara, keep the drive offline. Eris, stay in medbay and prep for contaminants. No one argued. They knew I was right. We couldn't stay in the ship forever. We were guests here, and guests must pay their respects. We suited up in our EVA gear, checking seals and oxygen levels. The airlock cycled, and the outer door opened. The sound of the wind hit us first, a low, mournful whistle that sounded like voices whispering in a language we couldn't understand. We stepped out onto the black stone. It was warm under my boots. The gravity was slightly heavier than Earth's, making every step feel laborious. The flora around us was tall, fern-like structures that curled away as we approached, sensitive to our presence. Scanning, Jinx said, her voice tight over the comms. Atmosphere is breathable. Nitrogen-oxygen mix. Trace amounts of argon. No toxins. But there's a high level of electromagnetic activity. It's interfering with my sensors. I can't get a clear read on the subsurface. Keep moving, I said. Head toward those spires. We walked for an hour, the landscape unchanged. Black stone, green plants, blue sky. It was eerily peaceful. Too peaceful. It felt like a stage set, waiting for actors to arrive. Then we saw them. In the distance, rising from the plain, were statues. Thousands of them. They were humanoid, but elongated with multiple limbs and heads that were smooth and featureless. They were made of the same black stone as the ground, and they were all facing the same direction, toward a massive structure in the center of the plain. A pyramid, but inverted, pointing down into the earth. Who are they? Miller whispered, raising his rifle. I don't think they're statues, Thorne said, his voice trembling slightly. Look at the bases. They're fused with the ground. They're roots. We approached the nearest figure. Up close it was terrifying. The stone was porous like bone, and inside the pores I could see faint traces of green light pulsing slowly. They're not dead, I realized. They're dormant. Jinx scanned the figure. Commander, there's biological matter inside. DNA strands. But they're fragmented, mixed with silicon. These aren't people. They're archives. Living hard drives. Archives of what? Of us, Jinx said, her voice dropping to a whisper. I'm picking up genetic markers. Human, but older. Much older. And other species. Hundreds of them. This place, it's a museum. Of every civilization that ever reached this far. A chill ran through me. Why? Because they failed, Thorne said. Look at the posture. Heads bowed. Hands clasped. They're not standing guard. They're praying. Or mourning. We continued toward the inverted pyramid. As we got closer, the whispering wind grew louder. It formed words. Fragments. Remember, lost cycle. We reached the entrance to the pyramid. It was a wide opening leading down into darkness. A ramp spiraled downward, lined with more of the stone figures. We go in, I said. Vance, this is a bad idea, Miller said. My gut says trap. My gut says we're already trapped, I replied. But this is the only way out. We need to know who built this, and why they brought us here. We descended into the dark. The walls were lined with carvings. Not pictures, but equations. Complex mathematical formulas that described the fabric of space-time. I recognized some of them. They were theories we were still debating back on Earth. Theories about faster-than-light travel. About consciousness transfer. They solved it, Jinx murmured, scanning the walls. They solved everything. Energy. Mortality. Travel. They mastered the universe. Then, where are they? Miller asked. Here, Thorne said. He pointed to the floor. The ramp ended in a vast chamber. In the center was a pool of liquid light. And surrounding the pool were thousands of the stone figures, arranged in a circle. But in the center of the circle, there was an empty pedestal. And on the pedestal was a single small object, a device. Metallic, sleek, familiar. I walked toward it, my heart pounding. I recognized it. It was a black box, a flight recorder, from a ship. Our ship, but not the Ethelgard. This was older, dusty, covered in millennia of grime. I picked it up. It was heavy, cold. Jinx plugged her data pad into it. It's active. Barely. There's one file. Audio only. She played it. The voice that came through was distorted, aged, but unmistakable. It was my voice. If you're hearing this, then the loop has closed again. I am Commander Elias Vance. And I have failed. Again. I dropped the device. It clattered on the stone floor. What? Miller stammered. What is this? Thorne picked it up, examining it. It's a recording. From you. But how? I don't know. I whispered. I've never been here before. Have you? Thorne asked softly. Or have you just forgotten? The ground beneath us began to shake. The liquid light in the pool began to rise, forming a shape. A humanoid shape. Tall. Elongated. Featureless. It spoke. Not in words. In thoughts. Welcome back, Elias. The cycle continues. Will you break it this time? Or will you join the collection? The entity stood before us, a silhouette of pure light against the darkness of the chamber. It had no face, no features, yet I could feel its gaze. It was heavy, judging, ancient. Welcome back, Elias. The words echoed in my mind, not my ears. I looked at my team. Miller had his rifle raised, but his hands were shaking. Jinx was frozen, her datapad still connected to the black box. Thorne was staring at the entity with a look of profound sorrow. Who are you? I demanded, my voice steady despite the terror clawing at my throat. We are the curators, the entity replied. And you're the traveler. You have visited this place many times. Each time, you seek to escape. Each time, you fail. And each time, you add your essence to the archive. It gestured to the stone figures around us. They were once like you. Explorers. Leaders. Heroes. They sought to conquer the unknown. But the unknown cannot be conquered. It can only be understood. And to understand it, one must become part of it. I'm not becoming part of anything, Miller spat. I'm shooting this thing. He fired. The plasma bolt struck the entity and passed through it, dissipating into the air. The entity didn't flinch. Violence is the language of the ignorant, it said. You cannot shoot a concept, Sergeant Miller. You cannot kill a memory. Jinx disconnected the black box. Commander, the data, it's not just audio. There's video. I'm projecting it. She threw the image onto the wall. It showed the Ethelgard, but it was different. Older, damaged. And I was there, standing on the bridge. But I looked older, tired, defeated. In the video, I was speaking to the camera. We tried to jump back. We tried to fight. But the drive, it's not a machine. It's a key. And we turned it in the wrong lock. We didn't leave Earth. We left reality. And this place, it's the waiting room. The place where lost souls go when they refuse to accept they're lost. The video ended. I looked at the entity. Is that true? Are we dead? No. The entity said, you are alive. But you are trapped. In a loop of your own making. Your desire to explore, to push boundaries, to defy limits, it brought you here. And your refusal to accept limitation keeps you here. You're the architect of your own prison, Elias. Thorn stepped forward. How do we break it? By letting go, the entity said. You must abandon the mission. You must accept that you will never return to Earth. You must accept that you are here, now, forever. Only then will the loop break. Only then will you find peace. Peace. Miller laughed bitterly. You call turning into a stone statue peace. It is preservation, the entity corrected. It is eternity. No more pain. No more fear. No more loss. Just being. I looked at my team. Kalen was still on the ship, alone. Mara was in the engine room, fighting a sleeping god. And here, we were being offered a way out. A way to stop the struggle. To stop the fear. But it wasn't freedom. It was surrender. No, I said. The entity tilted its head. No, I didn't come here to surrender, I said, my voice rising. I came here to explore. To learn. To protect my crew. If accepting defeat is the price of peace, then I don't want it. I'd rather die fighting than live as a monument to my own failure. Then, you will join the others, the entity said. The light began to intensify. The stone figures around us began to glow. The ground shook violently. Jinx! I shouted. The black box. Is there a way to override the loop? Jinx was typing furiously. The box, it's a key. It contains the code to reset the drive. But I need to upload it to the ship's core. Remotely. Do it. I need a signal boost. The interference is too strong. I looked at Miller. Miller, your rifle. The plasma cell. Overload it. Miller looked at me, confused. What? Overload the cell. Create an EMP burst. It'll clear the interference for a split second. Long enough for Jinx to send the code. That'll blow my arm off. Miller yelled. Do it. Miller grinned. A crazy, reckless grin. All right, boss. For the team. He ripped the power cell from his rifle and jammed it into the ground. Fire in the hole. He kicked it toward the entity. The cell exploded in a blinding flash of white light. The entity shrieked, a sound of pure digital agony. The interference vanished. Now Jinx. Jinx hit enter. Sending. On the ship, miles above us, Mara felt the surge. The drive woke up. Not to jump, but to purge. The exotic matter was ejected, vented into space. The ship shuddered, breaking the gravitational hold of the planet. In the chamber, the entity began to dissolve. You choose pain. I choose hope, I said. The chamber collapsed. The floor gave way. We fell into darkness. I woke up in the med bay. Thorn was checking my vitals. You're awake, he said softly. Did it work? I croaked. We're moving, Thorn said. Mara managed to stabilize the drive using conventional fuel. We're limping away from the planet. The nebula is behind us. I sat up, my body aching. The others? Miller lost his left arm. He's in surgery. Jinx is shaken, but fine. Kalen is crying, but he's alive. Mara is drunk, but she's alive. I smiled. It was a weak, painful smile. We made it, did we? Thorn asked. Look outside. I looked out the viewport. We were drifting in normal space. Stars. Real stars. Familiar constellations. We're back. I whispered. Are we? Thorn pointed to the navigation screen. Check the date. I looked. The date was correct. April 18th, 2026. The day we left. But we've been gone for weeks, I said. Time dilation, Thorn said. Or perhaps the loop didn't break. Perhaps we just started a new one. I looked at my hand. On my palm, Etched into the skin was a symbol, a circle with a line through it, the symbol of the null. I closed my hand into a fist. It doesn't matter, I said. We're together. We're alive. And we're moving forward. That's all that matters. Thor nodded. For now. I lay back down, closing my eyes. The silence of space was no longer screaming. It was waiting, and this time I was ready to listen. But I knew one thing for certain. We were never truly alone, and the universe was far stranger and far more dangerous than we had ever imagined. The end, or perhaps the beginning.